My name is Renee Harley. I'm in my early 30s, and for most of my adult life, I thought keeping the peace was the same thing as keeping a family together. But peace built on silence isn't peace at all. It's pressure, and pressure always finds a way to break. For 2 long years, I was the one quietly paying for my younger brother Kyle's life to stay afloat. Tuition, car payments, rent, deposits, random emergencies, his account freezing out of nowhere. The late fees, the surprise charges, every single moment he messaged me with that familiar, "Hey, sis, can I ask you something?" I always said yes, because that's what I thought family meant. Sacrifice without complaint. Kyle made it all sound noble. He didn't want to burden our parents, so he'd figure it out. Except figuring it out always meant one thing, me. And I told myself it wasn't resentment building underneath my ribs, just tiredness. But tiredness has a shape, a weight, a temperature, and when it hardens enough, it becomes something sharp. My boyfriend Daniel had warned me so many times. "Renee, he's not helpless, he's comfortable." I always brushed it off. I didn't want to be the sister who gave up on her own brother. But Daniel was right. Kyle wasn't drowning. He was floating on me. Still, I said nothing. Not even when Daniel's ex-girlfriend, Lena, made one of her subtle digs one night at a mutual friend's event. It must be exhausting dating someone who's always rescuing someone else. I ignored her, the way I ignored everything, and kept going, until the night everything cracked open. It was one of those big family dinners, the kind where the dining room is warm, the air smells like roast chicken and mashed potatoes, and laughter bounces off the walls. I walked in already drained from a week overloaded with client work, silently praying the evening would pass without Mom asking me for the 10th time why Daniel and I weren't married yet. Kyle arrived late, of course. New sneakers, new watch, new oversized hoodie like he was some influencer with a sponsorship deal. He breezed in like the room belonged to him. "Sorry guys, busy day," he said, loud enough for everyone to hear. Busy doing what, I had no idea. Certainly not classes. He talked big. Networking. Professors loving him. Internship offers basically lined up. I kept my mouth shut. I'd seen his attendance reports. He skipped more than he attended. Halfway through dinner, Aunt Lynn asked him how school was going. Kyle launched into some rehearsed speech full of buzzwords he didn't understand. Then Aunt Lynn looked at me. "How's work, Renee? Still doing everything on your own?" I smiled politely. "Yeah, it's been busy. I barely have time to cook lately." That's when Kyle laughed. Loud, sharp, obnoxious. The kind of laugh meant to wound. "Yeah, we can tell." The entire table fell silent. Kyle leaned back, smirking, eyes glinting with that practiced charm he used whenever he wanted an audience. "Come on, sis, you've always been the family disappointment. But hey, at least you're well fed." Something cold and electric sliced clean through me. 2 years. 2 years of paying for his life to function. 2 years of holding him above the water while telling myself he'd grow up eventually. And he sat there mocking me, while living off money I'd bled to earn. I could feel Mom waiting for me to laugh it off. Dad stiffened, but stayed quiet. That was my role. The peacekeeper, the fixer, the one who swallows everything and smiles. Not this time. I set my fork down gently, the quietest sound I'd ever made, and yet it felt like a detonation. I smiled, not because any of this was funny, but because in that moment, I realized something terrifyingly simple. I held the power. "Funny thing, Kyle," I said softly. "You're right. I am the failure." His smirk widened. "But the thing about failures," I continued, "is that they can stop paying your bills." He froze. So did every single person at the table. Dad's fork clinked against his plate. Mom blinked rapidly, as if hoping she'd misunderstood. Kyle stared at me, confused. Maybe for the first time, he sensed something was different. I folded my hands neatly on the table. "You know that car you love bragging about? Technically mine. You couldn't qualify for financing with your credit. I signed for it." A few people at the table gasped. "You were supposed to pay me every month. You managed 2 payments, one from Mom and Dad's Christmas money, and one when you guilt-tripped your ex into helping you." Kyle swallowed hard. "And your tuition?" I continued. "I paid that too, after you lost your financial aid for failing so many classes." Mom's face drained of color. I wasn't done. "That apartment you love posting on Instagram? I paid the deposit. I covered 2 months of rent after you blew your budget on a gaming console in a Vegas weekend." My cousin Jason choked on his drink. Still, I kept my voice calm, icy, precise. I reminded him how he lied about financial aid checks being delayed just to get rent money from me. how I opened a credit card for him to use only for emergencies, which he maxed out on takeout and energy drinks before ghosting me for 3 weeks. And after all that, I said quietly, you call me a failure? The room felt too still, still like a battlefield after the final shot. Then something shifted. One by one, people turned to Kyle, not with affection, with realization. For the first time, they were seeing him without the charm, a mask slipping clean off his face. Dad didn't yell. He just pushed his chair back and walked out of the room. Mom's voice shook when she asked, Kyle, is any of that true? He shrugged. It's not like she couldn't afford it. That sentence hit me harder than any insult ever could. I laughed, low, exhausted. I lived off protein bars for 3 weeks because client payments were delayed, I said. I overdrew my account twice. Meanwhile, you were in Miami using the money I sent you for books. Cousin Olivia looked down, then spoke quietly. Kyle borrowed $1,000 from me in July. Said it was for a late registration fee. He never paid me back. My uncle added that Kyle had asked him for $1,500 for a security deposit last year. Mom's face crumpled with horror. Then came silence. Thick, heavy, suffocating. A silence that said, this wasn't an accident. This was a pattern, and we all enabled it. I didn't say another word. I didn't need to. Kyle's act was over. The truth had done the work. And for the first time in years, the weight I carried shifted. The days after that dinner felt strangely heavy, like the air around me hadn't quite settled back into place. I expected Kyle to call, or text, or send one of his trademark guilt-laced messages, but he didn't. Not a single word. Part of me wondered if he was waiting for everyone to forget. That had always been his strategy. Disappear, lie low, circle back when the emotions cooled. But this time something felt different, not colder, just realer. 3 days after the dinner, my phone buzzed. Mom, I answered, bracing myself for the familiar tone, soft, pleading, gently nudging me to understand your brother. But her voice wasn't pleading. It was steady, almost businesslike. Renee, do you have proof? I froze. She wasn't questioning me. She believed me. But she wanted everything laid out cleanly, on paper. Screenshots, email receipts, transfers, bank statements, everything. She and Dad were sitting down with Kyle that weekend. Why now? I asked, my voice barely above a whisper. There was a pause. Then, your father went through Kyle's academic records. He hasn't been enrolled this semester. He hasn't been enrolled since spring. My stomach twisted. All those late fees, all those urgent textbook payments, all those crises he'd cried about. Lies, layered lies, coated with charm. We're printing everything, Mom said, highlighting it. No excuses this time. My father, the same man who hated conflict so much he'd once said, don't rock the boat, Renee, was building a spreadsheet. A spreadsheet. A part of me wanted to laugh. Another part of me wanted to cry. But I gathered everything. Screenshots of transfers, Venmo receipts, emails where Kyle begged for rent money, proof of the credit card I opened for him for emergencies, an itemized list of charges, takeout, energy drinks, and gas station junk. I had enough evidence to fill a binder. Later that evening, my phone buzzed again, this time from Olivia, my cousin. She said Kyle had sent her a long apology text. No manipulation, no excuses, just remorse. I don't know if he means it, she admitted, but I thought you should know. I wasn't sure what to do with that information. I didn't feel vindicated or triumphant, just exhausted. A few hours later, Uncle Ed called. He apologized for not speaking up sooner, for pretending not to notice. He said the dinner made him realize exactly how much I'd carried, alone. I hung up feeling hollow. That same night, Daniel came over. He'd been quiet since the dinner, soft, careful, watching me with concern, but giving me space. He wrapped his arms around me the moment I opened the door. You don't have to say anything, he murmured. I just wanted to be here. I leaned into him, letting myself breathe, letting myself exist without holding someone else up. But then a familiar name popped up on my lock screen. Lena, Daniel's ex. A tiny spike of irritation shot through my chest. She'd been circling ever since the dinner, sending him harmless little check-ins, supportive messages, little saw your story, hope Renee's okay, notes. The kind that sounded comforting but felt invasive. I didn't show Daniel the message, not because I didn't trust him, but because the last thing I needed was another emotional fire. I just slipped my phone back into my pocket. 2 nights later, Mom invited me over. Just me. She made coffee and brought out the old cookie tin she used to fill when I was a kid. She opened it, hands trembling slightly. I thought your brother was drowning, she said quietly. I didn't see you were the one holding him above the water. My throat tightened. She told me they'd stopped paying Kyle's rent. If he wanted the car, he'd have to refinance it himself. If he needed help, he'd have to get a job. For the first time, my parents were actually parenting him. Before I left, she squeezed my hand and whispered, "You did more than anyone should have asked of you." For the first time in a long time, I felt seen. The next morning, my phone buzzed. A $200 payment from Kyle. The first he'd ever made on his own. It didn't even scratch the surface of what he owed, but it was something. 2 days later, another text from him. "I know you don't have to forgive me, but I will pay you back, every cent, even if it takes years." I stared at that message for a long time. Maybe he meant it, maybe he didn't. But it was the closest thing to accountability I'd seen from him in years. I should have known it wouldn't last. A week later, a notification lit up my phone. Credit card charge, $320, from a trendy clothing store in LA. My stomach dropped. I opened up Kyle's Instagram story. There he was, grinning in a mirror selfie, wearing a black hoodie. Little treat for myself, been grinding. Grinding? Was he delusional? My hands shook as I screenshotted everything and sent him a single text. "I gave you every chance. This is it." 3 hours later, he replied, "Didn't realize the card was still active. I'll send it back." No apology, not even an ounce of remorse. Something inside me went still, not broken, just still. I called the bank, reported the charge, closed the card, blocked him everywhere. Phone, email, social media. I even removed him as my emergency contact. I wasn't angry anymore. I was finished. The next morning, my parents called. "Renee," Mom said carefully, "Kyle told us you overreacted." I cut her off. I sent screenshots. There was a long pause. Then Mom whispered, "We understand. Do what you need to do." And that was it. No guilt, no pleading, no pressure to forgive. Just understanding. That night was the first night in years I didn't fall asleep checking my phone to see if Kyle needed something. The silence felt strange at first, then peaceful, like breathing clean air after years of fumes. For the first time in my life, the weight I'd carried wasn't mine anymore. Silence has a sound. Not quiet. Quiet is temporary, a pause between storms. But real silence? It's a kind of space you don't realize you've been missing until it finally arrives. After I blocked Kyle, that new kind of silence settled into my life. At first it felt wrong, like I'd forgotten to lock a door or left the stove on. I kept expecting my phone to buzz with one of his urgent emergencies or dramatic apologies. My brain was wired for chaos, for being needed, for being drained. But every time I picked up my phone and saw nothing from him, the tension inside me loosened just a little more. The space he used to occupy in my mind finally started to empty out. And that emptiness, it slowly transformed into freedom. I rearranged my apartment, not because I had to, but because I finally felt like I could. I bought a new desk, the one I'd been eyeing for months but kept skipping because Kyle needed help with rent again. I booked a weekend away with Daniel, something small, but ours. For once, I wasn't calculating how much of my paycheck needed to be sent to someone else's sinking ship. And Daniel, he was a steady presence, a kind of quiet that didn't demand or drain. He carried my bags during our trip, held my hand in crowded stores, brushed hair off my face when I looked tired. He also didn't bring up Kyle unless I did. He understood that this silence was part of my healing. But someone else had opinions. Of course she did. Lena, Daniel's ex. She started reappearing like a ghost after the family dinner became gossip fodder among our mutual circles. Harmless messages. "Hope Renee's holding up. It must be hard dealing with all this. I'm here if Daniel needs someone to talk to." It was subtle, polished, dipped in sweetness, like poison coated in sugar. At first, I ignored it. I had bigger wounds to stitch shut. But one afternoon, Lena approached Daniel outside a cafe while I was inside paying. She touched his arm, leaned in too close, her voice soft enough to pretend she wasn't performing. I stepped out just in time to hear her say, "You deserve someone who doesn't always carry the world on her shoulders." Daniel stepped back immediately, shaking his head. "Lena, stop. I'm with Renee. I choose Renee. I don't need or want anything else." She blinked, stunned. Then she left. When he saw me, Daniel opened his mouth to explain, but I just took his hand. I'd heard everything I needed to. For the first time in months, maybe years, I felt protected. A few weeks later, Mom called again. Her tone was warm, tired, but different. Softer in a way I hadn't heard before. "Kyle's trying," she said carefully. "He's working part-time, taking the bus, paying back what he owes us, little by little." I didn't feel smug or vindicated. I didn't feel anything at all. "That's good," I said quietly. Mom hesitated. "I'm not asking you to forgive him. I just thought you should know." I appreciated that, more than she knew. This time, she wasn't asking me to fix him. She was just keeping me informed, respecting the boundaries I was finally enforcing. One afternoon, while sorting old emails for tax paperwork, I noticed something in my spam folder. From Kyle, subject, I get why you're done. My hands hovered over the trackpad before opening it. The email was long, messy, raw. He apologized, not the shallow, performative kind he used to offer, but real apologies with real ownership. I thought you owed me something. I thought your success meant I didn't have to try. I was wrong about everything. There was no request to reconnect, no begging for another chance, no emotional traps. Just truth. He ended with, you don't have to respond. I'm paying everyone back, even you. I don't know how long it will take, but I'm going to do it. I'm sorry, really. I stared at the screen until the words blurred. I didn't feel the need to forgive. I didn't feel the need to reply. I just felt still, like the ocean after a storm. Life didn't magically transform overnight, but something inside me did. My family, for the first time, stopped seeing me as the fixer. Stopped assuming I'd bend myself into pieces to hold everyone together. Daniel saw it too. One night on our balcony, he pulled me close and said, "You're finally choosing yourself, Renee. I'm proud of you." And I realized something. I didn't miss the chaos. I didn't miss being needed in all the wrong ways. I didn't miss the version of myself who survived instead of lived. For once, I wasn't the fallback. I wasn't the emergency fund. I wasn't the fixer. I was just Renee Harley. And that was finally enough.